AP 120, Chapter 14, Topics, Lymphatic Organs and Tissues. So there are a variety of lymphatic tissues, organs, and glands found throughout the body. And some things that are in common with all of them is they possess lymphocytes, type of white blood cells, macrophages, and other immune-related cells, as well as some additional cells, and have a big immune function. So these lymphatic structures tend to be in sites where pathogens are more likely to enter the body, which can include inside of the walls of some organs. So here is a cross-section of the large intestine, and we see this area here called MALT. MALT is the mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue. So this is lymphatic tissue inside the wall of the large intestine. And it is there because pathogens, one way to get in is to cross through the large intestine to get deeper into the body. So MALT, mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue, is found with a lot of different organs in the respiratory system, the digestive system, the urinary system, and the reproductive systems, all places where infection is more likely to occur. So some examples of where we have tissues outside of organs include the tonsils, the appendix, and Peyer's patches, and they all have lymph nodules. Lymph nodules are just masses of lymphatic tissue that are not in an organ. So the appendix has a lot of lymph nodules associated with it. The appendix does have a lot of bacteria in it, so it is an area of concern. The Peyer's patches are around the small intestines. Again, digestive system is ripe for invasion. And then, of course, the tonsils. The tonsils up in the pharynx area. Another place where pathogens are able to enter the body through the lining of our throat. And again, these lymphatic nodules have various lymphocytes, macrophages, other cells important for fighting infection. They do not have a filtering function, though, because fluids are not passing through them. So we have 5 tonsils. We have one pharyngeal tonsil at the back top portion of the pharynx. So here's the nasal cavity, and as the air flows in, boom, it's going to hit this area of the pharynx where we find the pharyngeal tonsils. Then we have 2 palatine tonsils and 2 lingual tonsils at the base of the tongue. The palatine tonsils, as you can see, often when we get infections, can swell significantly so that you actually can see them easily. Lymph nodes, I already talked briefly about them. The lymph nodes are located along the lymphatic vessels, and lymph fluid passes through them. So the functions of the lymph nodes include filtering the lymph fluid, getting rid of pathogens, but also cell debris and other things, as well as, of course, the immune response, because there are lots of lymphocytes and macrophages located in the lymph nodes. And while the lymph nodes are scattered along the length of the lymph vessels, there are large numbers of lymph nodes found in the groin area, the armpits, and the neck, which is why often people press against the sides of your neck if you think you're sick to see if they can detect some sort of swelling. Lymph nodes are shaped kind of like beans. Here's a lymph node that's been isolated in a cadaver. And as you can see, the lymph vessels, the afferent lymphatic vessels bringing the fluids in, the efferent lymphatic vessel carrying the fluids out. It has a mesh-like structure on the inside made of reticular fibers that allows it to filter any debris. And of course, there's also lots of immune cells, lymphatic cells, and macrophages located within the lymph node. Lymph nodes will filter the fluid many times. So the lymph vessels take the lymph fluid through multiple lymph nodes before returning it to the bloodstream. And remember, since the lymph is coming from the fluids of tissues, and one way to get in bacteria into your body is by some sort of injury, often pathogens can end up in your tissues before they get to the bloodstream. And so this is a way to try to isolate those pathogens. So again, lymph nodes often get swollen and tender when you are fighting an infection because more fluids and more white blood cells, leukocytes, will arrive to deal with that infection. And so knowing where this swelling is occurring can also give an idea of what kind of pathogen a person is dealing with. Something up in the head neck area, probably respiratory versus, say, other parts of the body. Red bone marrow. Red bone marrow found in, surprise, surprise, bones. Red bone marrow is the site of all blood cell production. This includes immature T lymphocytes and mature B lymphocytes. So obviously important for the lymphatic system since the red bone marrow is producing the lymphocytes. The immature T lymphocytes will travel through the bloodstream to the thymus, which is located a little bit above the heart, and there they will mature. The mature B lymphocytes go into the bloodstream and then end up in their target locations in lymph nodes, lymph nodules, and so on. Another kind of lymphocyte are natural killer cells. The natural killer cells go around throughout the body and destroy abnormal body cells. So what's blood cell production called? What's the fancy word for it? That's right, hematopoiesis. All right, again, here's the thymus, a little bit superior to the heart, found in the thoracic cavity, found within the mediastinum. It's a soft bilobed organ, and it shrinks over time. So the thymus and how effective it is when you're a young adult gets smaller and less effective as you get older. It has a lot of internal tissues and connective tissue pushing in to break it into lobules where it is able to gather up the immature T lymphocytes and help them mature. So the immature T lymphocytes arrive in the thymus, and there they're exposed to hormones secreted by the thymus, causing the T lymphocytes to mature and be ready to fight infection, to provide specific immunity. And then, of course, the T lymphocytes leave the thymus and go to the tissues where they're needed, lymph nodes, lymph nodules, Peyer's patches, etc. Spleen. Here is the spleen. Here's another view of the spleen. It is in the upper left quadrant. It is slightly lateral to the stomach. So here's the stomach, here's the spleen. And it is a little below, directly below the diaphragm, and it is the largest lymphatic organ. The largest lymphatic organ. It resembles a lymph node somewhat in structure, except it has a lot more blood vessels. So what it is filtering, the spleen, is filtering blood. That's why it has all these blood vessels coming in, bringing the blood in, allowing it to be filtered by the mesh-like structures in the spleen. The spleen is broken down into two kinds of tissues, red pulp, which is darker red in color, and white pulp, which is lighter in color. The white pulp has lots of lymphocytes. It's where it can generate the specific immune response, and so it is screening the blood for pathogens. This is the only lymphatic structure that is screening blood for pathogens. So the spleen, only lymphatic structure that's actually screening the blood for pathogens. And then the spleen also has the red pulp. The red pulp has lots of erythrocytes moving through it. It also has a lot of macrophages. And the red pulp's function is to pull out cell debris from the bloodstream and also to remove old erythrocytes, old red blood cells that are no longer functioning properly. So the macrophages and the mesh structures will help to pull out, to recycle the old erythrocytes. Disorders in the lymphatic system. Well, you can have a ruptured spleen. Apparently it is a common disorder when someone has some sort of trauma to the left side of their abdomen. If the spleen is ruptured significantly, it can lead to hemorrhaging, significant blood loss, and the person can go into shock. In theory, if it's not treated, it could even lead to death. And one way to deal with a ruptured spleen is by a splenectomy, where they remove the spleen. Unfortunately, this also reduces their functioning immune system. So their immune system doesn't function as well when the spleen is absent. Tonsillitis. Tonsillitis is when someone has persistent infection or inflammation of the tonsils. Can be caused by a virus, could be caused by other things. Basically, they end up getting these inflammations, the swelling of the tonsils multiple times, enough that the doctors think this is a serious chronic problem. And if the tonsillitis is severe enough, it can even lead to closure of the pharynx, making eating, drinking, and sometimes even breathing difficult. And it can be treated by tonsillectomy, so they can remove the tonsils, or at least the tonsils that seem to have this chronic issue. Turns out that removing the tonsils does not appear to affect the immune response. So again, lots of different lymphatic tissues and structures throughout the body, the tonsils, the lymph nodes, the lymphatic vessels, lymphatic trunks, lymphatic ducts, the appendix, the red bone marrow, the spleen, all important components. That is it for this part of the lecture.